Good morning, Crystal. How are you, ma'am?
I am fine, Jevon. How are you? Another week, another fun week.
Indeed, another week. So glad to have you here as always. And this time I've brought your, um, what do you call it, your bio. So
Okay.
I can tell people who you are. How
Okay.
was that?
But that's good, but can we welcome them to the show first?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations on the Patio with Crystal and Jevon. We started this because we realized that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and we realize that a lot of folks get that misinformation from their friends and family, and it's often in a relaxed setting like on the patio. So we're here having conversations on the patio about retirement plans and the things that they lead to, and the things or places rather where they come from. So today's topic is going to be taxes and the 401k, or taxes and company sponsored retirement plans like the 401k. My special guest, as always, Crystal Mitchell. And I actually have her bio, so she doesn't have to tell you who she is. So here we go. Crystal Mitchell, business coach consultant, CEO of Mitchell Business Solutions, co-director of Recycling Black Dollars, co-host of the Business Zone with Crystal and Gilbert, a weekly online radio show, instructor at Mount San Antonio Community College, certified network for teaching entrepreneurship instructor, and QuickBooks Pro Advisor financial strategist. Welcome, my friend and colleague, Crystal Mitchell.
Hello. Glad to be here, and thank you for that intro.
You
Appreciate
bet.
it.
You bet.
And so who are you?
Oh, yes. I'm Jevon Thomas. I'm a licensed retirement plan advisor. I specialize in company sponsored retirement plans as well as executive comp plans and things like that. So, let's go ahead and get started. So today's topic is taxes and the 401k. And the reason I chose this is every time I do an employee meeting, people are confused about the difference between a traditional contribution and a Roth contribution. And
Mm-hmm.
also, when we take a look at business owners, they don't realize how inexpensive it is to actually set up a company sponsored retirement plan. So we want to spend a little bit of time on both of those. And interestingly enough, they have to do with taxes. And then
Ah, everybody's favorite topic and subject.
yeah, yeah. And last but not least, we're going to talk about withdrawals and loans from the plan. So, shall we get started? Did I lose you, Crystal? Crystal?
Okay.
I lost. Are you back?
I'm back. I don't know what happened to my. Why did I pop off here though? Hold on, let me see what happened. I'm sorry. What happened? What happened?
Hmm. I don't know. Maybe I need to bring you back. Let's see.
Wait, no, no, no! Don't bring me back. I'm coming back.
Well, I actually don't have the option to bring you back. I have to
I
remove.
know. Why am I not here?
We do hear
what?
your voice.
I know what happened to me. Let me see what happened. Oh, there
There
I
you
am.
are.
Okay. Let me get my right camera going on though. I tell you, technology is just something else, isn't it?
I'm
It's
just
just.
glad someone besides me has the issue with technology.
I'm back. I'm sorry, guys.
Usually you're just spot on being patient with me. That's so cool. Okay.
Today is my day. Okay, there I am. Hi, guys.
There you are. There you are.
Okay.
All right. So the first topic that we're going to tackle is the difference between Roth and traditional um, contributions. And I'm going to say the word contributions because, in general, they apply to 401ks, company sponsored retirement plans, and IRAs. So, just in general, uh, actually, do you have a question about Roth versus traditional IRAs, Crystal? Is that
Yeah, maybe our audience could definitely have, and yeah, just if you just clarify it so that they'll know how it pertains to them.
Okay, I will. It is kind of a tricky subject. So, Roth contributions are what we call after tax contributions, and they grow what we call in the industry, our particular jargon is tax free. Right. So, that is
Mm-hmm.
you put the money in after you get paid, and it goes into your account and it grows tax free so that when you reach the age of 59 and a half, you can take all of that money out without paying taxes on it. So you get to take your contributions out. They've already been taxed, as you know. And the growth of those contributions, as long as you're over the age of 59 and a half, you can take that money out without penalty or without paying taxes as well. If you take the money out before 59 and a half, then you got to pay taxes.
Now,
So,
can I put this in my bank account, or do I have to put this in another investment account or something of that nature?
great question. You can put it in your bank account. You don't get um, any opportunities with it, any extra opportunities with it. So the thing is, you get um, after tax money. So then the question becomes, okay, let's say I leave my company and I have a Roth section of my 401k, and I like to say that the Roth section of my 401k. Please don't say a Roth 401k. That just drives me up the wall. It is the Roth section of your 401k,
So
and
it's a part of the 401k,
it's a part of the
not a
401k.
standalone entity.
Exactly. It's a part.
Ah, okay.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly. Thank you for that clarification. Okay,
Okay.
uh, so you can take your Roth section of the 401k. So that means the monies that you contributed, as well
Mm-hmm.
as the monies that are grown from that, even though you haven't reached 59 and a half, or it's only been there for 5 years, like it needs to be in your 401k plan. You take
Mm-hmm.
that money and
Mm-hmm.
you can roll it into the Roth section of your IRA. You can open up a Roth IRA or the Roth section of your IRA
Mm-hmm.
and keep the money there. Now, here's the kicker: if you put the money into a Roth IRA, you cannot move it back into a 401k.
Oh, is there a
Yeah,
penalty or what happens? Why can't you do that?
it's just the rules of the Roth 401k. I personally, and this is just my personal assumption, I personally
Mm-hmm.
think they were writing the law and forgot to put that in. Right? I think, yeah,
Oh.
because everything else is just like the traditional IRA, and I can't see of a reason why you wouldn't be able to do that. So once you take your money out of your Roth 401k,
Mm-hmm.
Roth section of your 401k, and you roll it into the a Roth IRA, it has to
Mm-hmm.
stay a Roth IRA. Right?
Okay. All right. So let
Conversely,
me. I have a quick question, and this is a curiosity question. So when did it become? What in what year where did the 401ks and Roths and all? When did they appear in our lives?
well, it depends on what you mean because there was a there's been a form of them for quite some time.
Okay.
So we first started off with teachers um, deductible accounts, I believe is what they call a TDA, a tax deferred annuity, actually,
Okay. Okay.
and they were offered to nonprofit organizations and teachers, and they were owned or sort of generated by a nonprofit organization who actually did a very, very good job with regard to education and allowing people to choose their own funds and investments. They were all annuities back then, so they had this huge, um, uh, what do you call it? A huge um, fee if you got out early, and there were
Oh,
all
okay.
these other fees on top of that, that made them rather expensive. But the company, I'm trying not to name names here, but the company that actually had most of those, that most teachers were able to take advantage of,
Mm-hmm.
they did a really good job. They finally became a for-profit organization, and not that these happened at the same time, but along the way, they became a for-profit organization around, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say it was, um, I want to say 75. Don't hold me to it. Don't
Okay.
hold me to it.
Okay.
It might have been 85, actually. I think it was 85. when someone discovered that because of a loop in the tax code, if you ran the paperwork the right way, you could put away money on a pre-tax basis. And therefore that was born, that's when the 401k was born. And that's actually a section of the tax code section 401k. And that has to deal with 401ks, section 403b, and versus 457b, that has to deal with those particular tax plans. And they're very similar. So there are loopholes in the tax code. And that's one of the reasons why we've got so much paperwork, because if you're going to have a 401k, you've got to write the paper so that it actually follows the rule of those particular tax breaks, tax loopholes, let's call them that, tax loopholes. So they took that tax loophole, they as in financial advisors and the Department of Labor, and without, I'm not going to say they worked together, but through the process of getting it and stretching it and manipulating it, they can create what we call today the 401k, and a body of law that directs them called ERISA. It's the Employee Insurance and Securities Act. I think the R is, I think it's Employee Retirement Insurance and Securities Act. So that's the body of law that governs company-sponsored retirement plans, as well as healthcare plans, and that's the operating tool that I use in order to keep straight is ERISA, one of the big operating tools that I use. So so back in the mid 80s is when they got kind of going. For-profit companies started to look like they do now. But for quite some time beforehand, we had a plan for teachers.
Okay, I was curious.
Yeah, it is kind of a good idea. The thing is, when it was just for teachers, nobody else had them. It wasn't until like the mid 80s that they became available for other people, the other workers. Right? So teachers had these for a much longer time in the 403b world than regular employees or folks that work wherever they do, right? Because most folks had pensions, right? And then the pension thing went away, and so
the 401. Okay. Now that makes sense, because I think I was in the work world at that time, and I think I was still working in corporate America in the 80s.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for that explanation. And I'm sure our audience appreciated it as well. Oh,
yeah. Just in case you have some cocktail conversation.
Right.
So that's the Roth. And it's kind of interesting that we started with the Roth. I'm not sure why I wrote that down in my notes, but we started with the Roth. And so essentially you've got after-tax contributions. They grow tax-free so that when you retire, you don't have to pay taxes on them. So if you happen to have a 401k plan or 403b plan, and you're able to make contributions to the Roth section of that plan, the cool thing is that you don't have to take your required minimum distribution, which is nice, right? Because you've already paid taxes. They're not going to get any tax money from you. They don't need to do that. So you don't need to take your required minimum distribution, which can reduce your tax liability once you are able to, access those monies. Okay, so that's the Roth.
Okay.
No taxes and no RMD. Yay!
Hey. Okay.
Let's move on to the. What's that?
I said awesome.
Yes, there you go. Let's move on to the traditional contributions, which is what most people start off with, what most people have now. And heretofore, what most people actually do to contribute, they go for the traditional one. So that's the one where you reduce your tax liability. And I think it's really an awesome way to go. So Mr. Biden's tax thing notwithstanding, we're not going to talk about that. That's another show, but we can get into it.
Okay.
If you want to. So the way it is now, that is before Mr. Biden's thing comes to fruition, you can make a contribution to the traditional side of your 401k plan. So the money comes out on a pre-tax basis. It has to come from payroll, just like with the Roth contributions. It has to come through payroll. You can't write a check or something like
Okay.
that. And it grows tax deferred. And that's jargon for you don't pay the taxes while it's in the plan, right? So
You
you
pay it
don't pay the
after.
taxes when you put it in. You don't pay the taxes while it's growing. You only pay the taxes when you pull it out. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So, and that's
Now,
generally after the age of 59 and a half. Okay, go ahead.
okay. So that means if I were to go and I'm going to start, I'm going to retire. Let's say I'm going to retire at 62.
Okay.
So at that point, when I'm leaving my company and I'm asking them, for my retirement money, then at
Mm-hmm.
that point, when that money comes into is it going to be taxed, at that company? I mean, or what happens? So it gets taxed as they're cutting my last check.
So you're 62,
Yes,
right?
and I'm retired from my company,
Retired from your company, and
and
you're going to roll those assets. You got a big pot of money, right?
okay,
A big pot of money because you've been
okay,
investing, because you've been listening to Crystal and I,
yes,
and me rather, listening to Crystal and me,
uh
and
huh,
you've been investing in your 401k for the last 30 years. And so now you have a nice big pot of money,
right,
and you have talked with your financial advisor,
uh
and your
huh,
financial advisor has said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to roll all of your assets into an IRA. And once
okay,
we roll those assets into an IRA, I'm going to divide them up into some annuities that are apparently appropriate for IRAs, and I'm going to roll them into some investments. And then you're going to take a chunk and you're going to do XYZ, and you're going to take your social security number or not take your social security check, whatever plan it is that y'all decide upon, and off into
mm-hmm,
the sunset you go.
okay,
Okay.
okay,
And notice you've actually been talking with your financial advisor for the last 5 years, and he's been getting you ready to make that transition
okay.
so
So
that you don't have to, right? You don't have to wait till you're 65 or 67. You're going to
mm-hmm,
roll your assets out at 62 into your IRA.
okay, all
That's
righty. That's
awesome.
just want to know the
That's our plan.
process.
That's our process.
Okay.
Now, it would be nice if the people that we talk to did that, but they don't. What they usually do.
so, so what happens when they don't listen to Jevon, the retirement plan advisor, and their
Exactly.
financial plan advisor? What happens
Exactly.
to them?
Yeah. So it's now that we can introduce the don't be that guy, right? So uh, you don't want to be this guy. This person actually takes his money that's in his account.
Right.
He's in this situation, he's only contributed to the traditional side of the 401k. So he's reduced his income, right? So if he made $30,000 a year
Mm-hmm.
and he put $10,000 of that into the traditional IRA, he's
Mm-hmm.
actually reduced his income by $10,000 that year. It comes right off the AGI as part of your modified actual gross income, right? So
Okay.
instead of the government taxing you at 30,000, they're going to tax you at 20,000. So you've already got a nice savings, right?
Okay.
And your money's grown tax deferred, or so you don't have to pay taxes on it. And that's great because if you were to take your money and say, I don't like 401ks, I want to put my money in the bank, like my ex girlfriend, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to pay taxes on that growth every year. Now, let's say,
Mm.
right? So let's say that you decided, you know what? I don't like that 401k plan. I don't trust those people. Jevon is whacked. I'm going to take my money and I'm going to stick it in a bank and I'm going to put $10,000 a year into my bank account. So I'm
Okay.
not going to put $10,000 a year into my 401k. I'm going to take my $10,000 a year. I'm taking my bank account. The cool thing about that is I can put $250,000 in my bank account and it is FDIC insured.
Right.
Number one, it's
But
not
you're
going to go
getting
down.
very little investment on that, right? I mean, the
Bingo.
return is really, really small.
Yes, yes. And you
Okay.
get to pay taxes on
So the gain, that's what we're talking about, right? Any
it.
gains that you
Yes,
acquire in that time, that's what you're paying the taxes on?
exactly. Exactly.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to be that guy.
Mm-mm. Now, let's say you decide, aha, Jevon, I can't get very much growth in the bank and I have to pay taxes. So I'm going to outsmart you and I'm going to put my money over at yada yada investment firm, one of those big ones.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And that way I can get more of a return and I don't have to have my money tied up in the company. Right?
Okay.
Okay. So you don't invest in the 401k, you take your $10,000 a year and you put it in XYZ investment firm. And you've got yourself a manager there and he's managing that money for you. Not only do you get to pay him the fees to manage that money, but you also get to pay taxes on that money because it is not tax deferred. Right? So
Oh.
you have not reduced your income. You have paid some more in fees. Right? So now let's say you're thinking to yourself, I don't trust my boss with my 401k money. I've got an IRA. I can stick $6,000 in my $5,500 in my IRA. That's all I'm going to contribute anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I can create the IRA and do that, right? I can create the IRA outside the 401k. Of course, if you've been listening to Crystal and me, you will max out your 401k and your IRA, and then we'll be very happy. But if you don't listen to us, you can say, all right, I don't want to do the 401k. I just want to do the IRA. You get the same treatment, pre-tax, money grows tax deferred. You don't have to pay taxes. When you reach 55 or 59 and a half, I'm sorry, you can pull that money out, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you're going to pay fees to have it managed. And that's going to be kind of close there, right?
Mm.
But you can do that. So you can put the money in the IRA if you don't like your 401k.
So that would be now. What? Let me ask this question: why would I? I mean, obviously, I recall back in the day, and it's been a little while since I've worked for someone. You know, they really well the company that I work for. Maybe this doesn't happen for all companies, but they really kind of went through a whole process explaining to me or to us what was going to happen, and when we walked away, we realized, exactly what you just said. This was for our benefit. Of course, it was seemed like in my 20s, a long, long time from now.
So you're saying that wasn't exactly last year. Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't last year. So, but it did make sense. It's like, okay, well, this is like money in the bank, right? It's just saved. They take it out of my check and I don't have to see it. And I don't see it being pulled out. So
Yeah.
this is a good thing. It helps me save for a future time that seems like eons away from my regular world.
Yeah.
So is that not what happens? Is why would a person not like their 401k?
Most people don't like their 401k because they don't understand that it's number one, it's their responsibility to save for retirement. You have to do that. It's like
Okay.
it's becoming an adult, right? You learn to drive, you learn to pay your taxes, and you
Mm-hmm.
save for your retirement. That's part of the adult thing. You got to do that.
Right.
Most people
Exactly.
don't want to do that, right? They don't
Oh.
want to save because we're focused on the young. The other thing is they don't understand the market. They don't understand the difference between a stock and a bond and a mutual fund and what's an international fund. And even if I did understand the vocabulary, how do I mix it together? How do I figure out how much of this I need and how much of that I need and which is different? And then there's over 7,500 stocks traded on one exchange, the New York Stock Exchange.
Right. Exactly.
How do I figure out which one of those is going to be which 10 of those is the right ones for me? Right. And then we've got
Which
the
means
international,
I'm overwhelmed, basically.
horribly overwhelmed. We
Okay.
call it
Okay.
paralysis by analysis. It's
Okay. I
just,
like that term. You used that
yeah,
before. I like that.
It's too much, right? So, and then they don't know how to get help or where to get help. And who are they going to trust? Some guy comes in a bow tie, in my case, and a suit and starts talking about investments, right? Number one, we don't even know how to spell investments. And like we were talking about last week, nobody really sits down and talks to us about how we're supposed to handle this, right? The good news is that there are people that can help you and they run your 401k plans. And I've never met a horrible 401k plan person. I've met some people whose methods I definitely disagree with, but in general, they're okay. There's not too many Bernie Madoffs. There's not too many people getting rich off of the 401k. So you don't have to think about them ripping your money off and going to Tahiti. So it's not like that. But you do have to trust and understand them, right? I mean, you do have to come to a meeting of the minds. And that's why we do the employee meetings. And that's why 401k folks really want to meet with you as much as they can. There's the what we call the robo advisors out there, and there's some pretty cheap products that people engage with. In my opinion, if you already know exactly what you want to do, those products are fine. But if you don't, or if you have questions, or if you have a special situation that you think so, or if you just are a special person, for whatever reason, you're different. I would want to sit down with someone and say, hey, here's my situation. How do I get this done? And if I can do it at a fairly nominal cost, so much the better. I'll go out on a limb and say that most people are concerned about fees, and that's very true. But on the other hand, we're always concerned about fees, right?
Right.
We go to the car lot to buy a car. We don't want that salesman to make any money. We go to buy something at a store. Why do they have to make a profit? You want to go someplace. I mean, nobody wants to pay, right? So the same thing.
Of course, until you that entrepreneur and you're trying to get people to pay you, and you and you've been all these years telling everybody that I'm sorry, I don't want to pay you your money until you get on that side. So it's about business, guys. It's about business.
It is. We all got to get paid, right? Now, to be truthful, nobody wants to or should have to make that advisor's boat payment off of their 401k, right? I mean, there are some reasonable fees, and then you can go beyond that. But we do want to pay professionals to do their work. So the long and the short of it is, there are some fees, and you need to contend with those. But a 401k is a great deal because of what you just said. The money comes out of your paycheck, goes directly into the K plan. You don't know that it happened. In general, it doesn't affect you, and it's easy peasy, and it works. It works very well. Right, and if you don't want to know how to get it done, but you like my bow tie, then we'll hook you up, right? We'll make it so that you don't have to know everything, right? But you do have to trust to know a little bit, and so that's what the education is. You want to have enough education to make a good decision, and that's what the 401k team is trying to do. They're trying to give you enough information so you can make a good decision, because nobody knows you better than you. So no one knows your particular risk tolerance better than you. So so that's how that works.
Okay. And you hear so many horror stories. Again, like I said, when you started a company, maybe, when you're in your 20s or your 30s, you're probably a much more financially savvy in your 40s. But when you're young, we're young, right? So life is forever. But you hear a lot of horror stories when individuals when they get to retirement age and just don't have enough money in order to survive. And you just wish you could just send them back in time and sit down with the retirement plan advisor and kind of reset. And I'm sure they would make different decisions at that point in time. So it's very important that people understand that, it may seem so far off right now, But really, there is going to come to a day when your retirement check may be like $700 and your rent is $2,000, right?
Yeah.
And your health insurance or your medical expenses are astronomical, and just living every day, and you didn't plan for it. So and now you might have some, you might not be completely well enough to go back to work. And isn't it sad that here you are, been looking forward to your retirement for the last 30 years, can't wait to the last day to have your retirement party, and then the next Monday you got to go work at the Walmart just to feed yourself.
Yeah. And glad to have that gig, right?
And
Happy
glad
to
to
be
have
there.
that gig. But you
Yeah,
got off
happy to
of
do it.
rat trap. I mean, what is the rat race? Where you put in and gave 20, 30 years or 30 years of your life. And now, if you wanted to work part time, that's cool. But wanting to work part time and having to work part time is two different stories.
Very different, very different. And we're finding for a few different reasons, that people are living longer than they're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time when we started this whole Social Security thing that, you started receiving the money at 65 and then you died at 70 and life was good. You had three or four people that were supporting your retirement with Social Security, and you had some family and savings and all that kind of good stuff. And then all of a sudden, that kind of went away, and now we have people living on their Social Security. It was supposed to be a helper to the money that you'd saved,
Right.
and now it's starting to be people's sole amount of income. And financial advisors are giving people advice that suggests you can get more in total from Social Security than what you could if you do it this way or that way. What's your strategy to handle Social Security? And involved in that is when you die, right? I mean,
Yes.
which is if you're in a family that where everyone dies at 70, then maybe getting your check at 62 is a better idea than waiting to 65, and you might
Mm-hmm.
not get there. If you have a terminal disease or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to take all that into account, and I think it's a very good discussion to have with your family, like our good friend Tony was saying. This is family planning here, right?
Yeah.
This is not just individual planning. So
I
we
agree.
talked. Yeah, that's cool. Did you have any other questions about traditional
No. Mm-mm.
contributions? So we talked about Roth contributions. They go in after tax. It's like you get your check and you buy your things, you buy your money. We're just going to do it through payroll.
Mm-hmm.
You buy your investments, and then those investments grow tax free. You reach 59 and a half, pull the money out if you want, or roll it into an IRA, or roll it into a bank account. You've already paid the taxes on it. Life is good. No required minimum distribution because you've already paid taxes. Yay!
Yay.
Yeah. And you've started that program about 5 years before you thought you were going to retire. So you're transitioning to that. Don't be that person. And this is the don't be that person part. Don't be that person that takes all of your money, gathers it up all inside the money market account, inside their 401k plan, and then takes that money and puts it in their checking account, and then calls their 401 their financial advisor and say, "Hey, I just moved my money out of my 401k into my checking account. Help me out."
Well, that's kind of late now because you're in a position where you can be taxed on that money, right? The minute it
Bingo.
comes out and goes into your own personal account and not rolled over, and that. I think that's it. If I didn't remember anything else from that don't roll it into your bank account.
Exactly. Exactly. And I hear people doing it all the time. And once they do it, then they say, whatever company ripped them off, took half their money. They lost 60% of their money. It's bad, right? Because now let's say if you're making $60,000 a year and you put in $500,000, you've now made $560,000 a year, and you're in the 40, maybe 50% tax bracket, right?
Mm.
So half of your money is now gone. Not good. Not good.
Yeah,
Not good. So
that would make you angry.
that would make you angry. So
Yeah.
you don't do it to your relative, right? I mean, if you have a relative and they're trusting on you, don't get them in that tax situation, right? So when your folks are looking to retire, you want to help them out a little bit and tell them the rules of the road with regard to those IRAs. So don't take all that money out, put it in your hot little hand, and then hire a financial advisor. That's not good. Okay.
So, as we keep saying, planning and hiring that person, before you need it,
Yes.
way before when the first idea germinates that retirement is around the corner, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're happy to have the conversations. I've never talked to a financial advisor that didn't want to get in early. We all want to get in early. Nobody wants to get in at the last minute and be on the white horse and save you. That's usually expensive, and it's usually less money that they have to manage, and that's not cool, right? We want to manage the money
Right.
up. Okay, so that's the way that goes. Okay,
Okay.
now let's just switch gears a little bit and let's talk about the entrepreneur, the person that's actually setting up the 401k plan. So I don't know if you're aware of this, but recently, within the last year, last couple of years, the federal government has increased the amount of tax credit you get for actually initiating a company-sponsored retirement plan like a 401k.
No, I did
Right?
not know that.
Yeah. So there used to be a tax credit benefit of $500. And the way that it worked is you were eligible for a $500 credit every year based on the amount of money that it took to start the plan. So if we can say that simply and not so convoluted, the federal government was going to allow you to get a credit for half of the monies that you use to start your plan for 3 years, up to $500,000, up to $500.
Okay.
Right? So it would be like this. Let's say with regard to the fees you had to pay to get the plan going, the education, you had to pay somebody to come out and do the education, the fees you had to do to get this whole thing set up was right off my head $10,000.
Okay.
So the federal government is going to say, okay, here's what we're going to do. It costs you 10 grand to set that thing up. How much did it cost you in the first year? Let's say 3 grand. So we're going to give you a credit for half of that, up to $500. So even though 3 grand is how much it cost, half of 3 grand would be $1,500. We're going to give you a credit for 500. So that's not a deduction. That's actually real money. That says you owe X. We're going to give you a credit for 500.
Okay.
Right. So if it only cost you $1,000, right, you would get that whole $500. There you go. If it only cost you $250 that first year to get set up, then you get a credit for half of that 250. So it'd be 125. So 500 is the most you can get. Does that make sense? That's the most you're able to get. But you can do it for 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
That's not bad.
Not bad. So
Yeah.
kind of
Nice
think of it as
incentive.
$1,500 as credit for however how much it costs you to set up that plan. Here in SoCal, probably costs us $4,500 plus maybe 5-6 grand at the most to start a plan, right? So you take a look at things working out the right way. $1,500 credit, that's not going to be a bad deal over 3 years.
Okay. Okay.
Makes
That's
sense?
not bad. Yeah.
It's not bad.
And that's the incentive for the company, the CEO or the company to provide a 401k plan for their themselves and their employees.
Right.
Okay.
Well, now, since the last couple of years, the federal government has raised that limit to $5,000.
Whoa, that's a real incentive right there.
Yeah. So if you start that 401k, it still works the same. You only get the credit for half of the money that you spent to get that plan going, but you still have 3 years to recoup the cost, and your limit is now 5 grand a year. So technically, I've never seen this happen, but technically, if it costs you $30,000 to start the plan, right?
Okay.
You would get a credit for $15,000
Wow.
over a 3 years period.
Or a
Right?
3 year period. Okay. Well, that would
So
be a
they
good
really,
incentive.
yeah, because they
Mm-hmm.
really want you to start the plan. And of course, it can vary, right? So maybe it costs you 2,000 in the first year and 1,000 in the second year and 500 in the third year. So you get half of that
Mm-hmm.
as the credit. Makes sense? Up
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
$5,000.
Mm-hmm.
So they really want you to start that because that's actually a credit. That's very good. Um, I would say that's a great way to go to think about starting your plan. Also, depending on your income, as someone who makes contributions to a plan, you can get a tax credit for being a um, for an investor if your income is below a certain level. I'm not going to go into that right now, but
Okay.
suffice it to say, you know, if you make more than $30,000 a year, it's tough to get a credit for low income. But depending on your situation, it's definitely something to look into. You may be able to get a tax credit for the amount that you contribute to your 401k plan. So your
Mm-hmm.
employer can get a credit for starting one,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And you, as the employee, can get a credit if you have a pretty small income, but you can get a credit as well. So you the government really wants you to save money, and you make those contributions via the Roth or via the traditional. It's not important. The federal government just wants you to have money to live on in addition to Social Security when you retire. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it benefits for them because would that have been because there's been so many conversations that Social Security is going to be running out and um, things of that nature that would have motivated that incentive.
Well, I don't want to get into politics now. This
Okay.
isn't quite our quite our conversation, but
I mean, just broadly.
yeah. But the credit's been around for a while.
Okay.
It's
All right.
there
Cool.
actually to help people, set up retirement plans on both sides of that equation.
Okay.
Um, I want to say, I'll just go on a limb and suggest that a huge number of people in this country, dramatically more than not, work for small businesses,
Yeah.
and the amount of small businesses that have retirement plans is paltry. It's just really sad.
It is.
So yeah, so the government's looking at, okay, we exist on taxes. We're going to get to the point where we're going to have so many people that are retired, they're not generating taxes and we're paying money out. So we need to get some more money in the coffers. We need to help people set up these retirement plans. How can we do that? We can't hold a gun to the president of the company's head and say start retirement plans. So what we can do is get him a credit on his taxes. So we
Okay.
get you a credit on your taxes, get that thing going, and off to the races you go. Depending on how you set up the plan and depending on the assets in the plan,
Mm-hmm.
you can have a plan where you as the organization doesn't pay as much as you think it does, right?
Ah. Okay.
So now you've got even more incentive. So the thing that you want to do is if you've got a group of employees, you want to be a good corporate citizen, you want to do the right thing. In my opinion, that means you need to provide some benefits. And health benefits is one way to go. Retirement benefits is another way to go. It's just something to think about so that you can be a good business person in society. There are lots of folks who say, look, if you really wanted to save for retirement, you start your own business. There are those folks, and I can't disagree with that. But um, uh,
but
but
but but but on
it
that
is
same
revenue
note,
too.
that getting good employees requires providing them with a future, and it's not just about the annual salary, but it is about a future and a great work culture, and I think that's important.
Yeah, yeah. It's even especially now. I do want to caution you this though. The credit doesn't work for individual 401ks. It only works if you have employees.
And is there any minimum on
for a
how to
partnership.
a partnership? And do you have to have, let's say you had, is there a minimum, 2 employees, 3 employees, 4 employees?
No, no,
No,
just got to
just
have
long
one.
as there's somebody other than yourself,
Yeah, well, an employee,
an
right?
employee.
So now that
Yeah,
I've said that, it doesn't work for partnerships. You got to have employee.
you gotta have employees. Okay, all right, makes sense.
Okay. So now let's talk about how to get your money out of the plan.
Okay, that's
Sometimes
a
that
good
happens.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Um, I set up a lot of retirement plans, and people talk to me about, all right, let's say things aren't going right. How do I get my money out? Okay. Um, Once you carry the age of 59 and a half, you can pull your money out, no penalty, but you have to pay the taxes. So if
Mm,
you have a 401k plan and you pull $10,000 out of that 401k plan and you put that in your bank account and you're 60 years old, then you will not have a penalty, but you will be taxed on that money. And the way that it works is they take that $10,000, it's automatically tacked onto um, your income for the year, your gross income from the year for the year. Then you go through your MAGI, your taxing as you know about, and all of a
mm-hmm.
sudden now you come up with a number, and that's how the taxes are going to be generated. They don't add it to your AGI, so that's
Oh,
good to know,
okay.
right? But they do add it to there's your income for the year.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah. So you don't want to use it as a savings plan, but as we know, um, the pandemic happens, and so we need to save some money. We need to get to the money sometimes. So you can pay the taxes, and then the CARES Act helped do some things that eliminated the penalty and all that kind of good stuff. In general, though, you want to wait till you're 59 and a half to get that money out of the plan.
Mm.
But what happens when just stuff, right? Life throws curves at you, right?
Like
Well,
last year?
like last year, right? So, in general, when it comes to a 401k or even an IRA, there's some reasons you can take money out of the plan. So, you can take monies out of the plan generally to purchase a home, right? So, if you're going to purchase a home, for the down payment or something like that,
Okay.
usually the figure is around $10,000, but I've seen it higher. So, you can take money
Okay.
out of your 401k. I don't think that's a good idea. I think that a home is a wonderful investment. I would rather people left their money inside their 401k, inside their IRA, and found some other way to save to buy that home, right? That's what I would say
Mm-hmm.
because, time is your friend when it comes to the market. So if you take money out, it's no longer working for you. But
Mm.
many people I know use their 401k assets to help them buy a home. Okay. And
Okay.
there's a way to do that. The
Okay.
other thing
Cool.
is, other things are if you're going to be evicted from your home, you can take money out of your 401k plan. This is before 59 and a half, right? Call this a hardship withdrawal. So is the other one. If you're going to be evicted, if you are evicted, right? If the sheriff is on his way with a piece of paper, and
Mm-hmm.
then you can take a picture of that paper, take it to your boss, and most likely you'll be able to get monies out of your plan because you're close to being evicted. The other
Okay.
one is your home's being foreclosed on.
Mm.
All right. So you got to take a picture, take it to your HR person. They'll send it to the company or your TPA, and so you can generally get money for that. If you want to pay college monies, tuition, housing, books, that kind of thing, you can take money out of your plan for that for your kid.
Okay.
Well, that's pretty cool. The last one I have here on my list is that was just room and board. So that's the deal. So college, books, room and board, that kind of thing. Um, Trip to someone just to do a year at sea. We got to come up with that tuition and room and board. We can take
So
that out of our
a
401k plan.
sabbatical. So let me ask. So with that question, especially for the buying of a house, if that you were going to do something like that, or your college, which is important, and definitely things that are non-emergency, could I sit down with you like pre? My kid is going into high school, or my kid is in middle school, so I'm gonna sit down with my retirement advisor, plan advisor, and say, okay, we're looking at how we're going to pay for college. So what are my options? And I'm seeing that one of my options is with my retirement plan. And if it's enough time, could I recoup some of that, or at least I'm not just pulling all of that out? Let's say, I'm in my 40s and my kid is going to be graduating in about 5 years, but I'm not going to be retiring for another 20 years. That was a massive word problem. Would I sit down with you to pre-plan what that would look like?
You should.
Okay.
You should sit down with someone like me to see what that looks like. Someone like me should tell you that's not the way we want to think about this. We want to make sure that if we're gonna and that's a big if we're gonna plan for a kid's education, we want to do that outside the 401k plan. Maybe we'll do an education IRA. Maybe we'll do an UTMA account or something like that. Maybe we'll do something else, or maybe we'll start a Roth IRA for that person. We'll figure out a way to do that. So we'll do something different.
Okay.
We're not going to mess with that 401k. Now, push come to shove, and whoa, we got no money. All right, I'll tell you what, Junior. College costs $10,000 a semester. I'm good for $2,000.
Okay. Okay. So there's still some planning going on.
Yeah.
So that you.
Okay. We don't need to be recovering from the education.
Okay.
That's how we get into trouble.
Right. Exactly. Because obviously with the foreclosures of your home and that kind of stuff, there's no way you can try to prevent all that. But I would imagine taking your retirement is your last effort. Very much. Did you see from in 2020? Were there any withdrawals from retirement plan? I know a lot of people retired, but were there withdrawals in order to survive the pandemic?
I did not see the numbers. I know from my clients, it was a very mixed bag. From the clients I had, some of them needed to get in there. Some of the participants needed to get into their 401k and make those withdrawals. We had some pretty interesting situation. And it wasn't just people of lower socioeconomic means. Some very wealthy people had to figure that out as well because their income just stopped on them.
Yeah.
And the money from the government wasn't, they made too much money in 2019 to
qualify for for the resource.
So, yeah. So they had to dig in. Some of the companies that I work for just laid people off. Yeah. You're gone, many of the folks were able to hang on and not draw from their 401k plan. They were able to leave that money there. And that's actually the best situation because, we've had some topsy-turvy stuff, but I haven't seen an uptick in the contributions, certainly. And I have seen where people just stopped contributing because of the anxiety of not knowing what to do. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen some folks that kind of hoard onto that money and maybe keep that in their checking account just in case the next shoe drops. Mm-hmm. And so it was across the board as to what happened with my clients.
With your clients, okay.
With my clients.
And I wonder if we're going to still, because there are a number of people that their bosses are insisting that they come back to a actual live environment and don't want to maintain the hybrid. So I would imagine we're going to still see results of this for at least another year, I would think.
No, I think you're right in some lasting way. And I think it's going to be some good, some bad, but I think you're absolutely right. We're going to see this for some time coming. The last thing I want to do is talk about loans. And then we're at about where our hour should end, but I want to go over that really quick.
Okay.
If you borrow money from your 401k plan, number one, it is, or from most company-sponsored plans, it says excluding IRAs, in which you cannot borrow from an IRA. You can't borrow from a SEP IRA. You cannot borrow from an IRA, a simple IRA. Those are IRAs. Okay. You can't borrow. But you can borrow from a 403B or 401k or a 457 plan, generally. I mean, those parameters can be put into your plan. And when we write a plan now, We don't like the idea of people borrowing from their plan because it's not a piggy bank, but we realize that sometimes folks got to do what they got to do. And I'm
Right.
seeing more opportunities put in plans for borrowing now. So whereas I used to hear, we're not going to let people borrow from the plan at all. Now we're starting to hear, okay, we'll allow 2 loans, maybe consecutively, uh,
Right.
simply because people run out of money, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this pandemic taught us, we're all living a lot closer to our best
Edge.
than we used to the edge. Yes.
Yeah.
So in general, when you borrow from a 401k plan, you can borrow 50% of your vested balance, and that includes generally all your money plus um, some of the money that you put in there. So if you have a vesting schedule on your company's money, you can borrow 50% of that as well, right? So you're always 100% vested in your money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can borrow 50% of your vested money. So you may have $10,000. That's your contributions that you put in, and you may have $3,000 that that's come from the company, but you're only 50% invested that. So you could only really take 1,500 of that 3,000. So you could,
Okay.
yeah, so you should be able to borrow 50% of your money plus of that that $3,000. And sometimes the way they write is you can borrow 50% of your money, right? It's your
Mm.
money, so
Okay.
you put it in
Okay.
there, you take it out, right? It's your vested money. So the cool thing about the loan is it's in the market still. It's you have not taken it out. Most times, companies will find a way to like keep you in the market, right? But they also charge you interest on the loan.
Is it uh pretty a standard interest, or is it at a higher rate than if you just went to a bank, if you could go to a bank and lend and borrow from there?
Yeah, it's usually 1 to 2 points above prime.
Oh,
So it's not very expensive, right? The
okay,
cool
okay.
thing about the interest is when you pay the interest, it doesn't go to the company, it doesn't go to the carrier, it goes right back to you. So it's a
Oh,
little bit
okay. So
of
like
a
borrowing for yourself.
bingo.
Mm-hmm.
People say that it's like borrowing from myself and I'm going to pay it back. I always say, yeah, but you have to pay it back. So you're not making any friends or saving any money because you got to pay. And
Right.
here's the deal: if you take the money out pre-tax and you borrow it, if you borrow the money pre-tax and you pay it back with after-tax dollars. So you get the tax benefit, right? Putting the money in, you reduce your tax liability. You put in $10,000 that came right off of your AGI. So you
Mm-hmm.
got pre-tax dollars. When it comes time to pay it back, you have to pay back the full amount that you borrowed within 5 years plus interest. And you have to do that with after tax dollars. And then when you go to pull that money out at the age of 59 and a half, you pull it out and you got to pay taxes on it. So you get
Ah.
taxed twice on that borrowed money.
Yeah, so you need to really have a conversation before you
Yeah.
make that happen.
Right.
Right,
Yeah. So
exactly.
the price of using money. So that's how the loan works.
Okay.
I'm just going to go back to the don't be that guy part, and that's to say, do not take all of your money at the age of 65 or 70, put it into a bank account, and then hire your financial advisor to tell you what to do with it. Please do not do that. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy.
So call Jevon now if you plan on retiring in 5 years so that
That's
you will
right.
have all of the information that you need to make sure
Mhm.
you're making the right decision.
Exactly. We don't want you to be that guy. Okay,
Yeah.
let's close out. Let me read your bio and talk about me
Okay.
for a minute, and then we'll end the show. How's that? Unless you have
That
another
sounds,
question.
nope, that's it. Fantastic.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you Crystal Mitchell, my esteemed partner and colleague, business coach, consultant, CEO of Mitchell Business Solutions, co-director of Recycling Black Dollars, co-host of the Business Zone with Crystal and Gilbert, another weekly online show, instructor at Mount San Antonio Community College, certified network for teaching entrepreneurship instructor, and last but not least, a QuickBooks Pro Advisor, financial strategist, and a really cool person. That's Crystal. I'm Jevon Thomas, retirement plan advisor. This has been Conversations on the Patio, and thank you for joining us.
Yes, and we'll see you the next time. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a great week.
Bye, Crystal.
Bye-bye.